Howdy! Welcome to the Deep Space Travel Break, Episode 6, brought to you by the Deep Space Travel Network. Find your next destination with DSTN at deepspacetravelnetwork.com. That's deep-space-travel-network.com. DSTN does not guarantee the accuracy of provided portal coordinates. DSTN is not responsible for inaccurate depictions of locations or accidents involving incorrect portal coordinates. And now for housekeeping. Holy cow. So, I've passed 250 subscribers, which is huge. Thank you so much for listening and for supporting my content. I've been working pretty hard to produce better videos with better audio, and I think I've learned a lot along the way, and I also think it's getting better. Hopefully you can tell the difference. And of course, thanks again for all the comments and the likes, even the negative comments. Thank you. And in case you missed it last week, the last episode of the podcast was a megasode. I had a friend on the podcast as well, and we discussed everything to do with Frontiers. We gave our impressions, our critiques, and anything else you like. So in case you missed it and all the craziness of the last 2 weeks, I would recommend giving it a listen if you have the chance. If you want to listen to my full thoughts on Frontiers and the expedition and everything. But if you're waiting for like a proper review of Frontiers, you may have to wait a little bit longer. Because I'm doing that as part of my every update reviewed and ranked series. And last week I put out episode 1. Go check it out if you haven't. And it's about an hour long and it covers the first 4 updates. So I'm going to be doing it as part of that series, but I still have a few years of updates left to cover first. So in the meantime, check out episode 1. And by the way, if maybe you're afraid of watching episode 1 because like I said, it's an hour long. If you just want to hear my opinion, pro tip, just click the video, go to the end of it, and then you can see my rankings for all 4 from that episode at the end. And then you can just comment if you agree or disagree. You'll probably agree with some of it, disagree with other parts. That's totally cool. But either way, thanks for watching, and let's actually get to the news. So this week we actually have plenty of news for the first time since this podcast started. First off, we have Expedition 3, Cartographers, which launched last Wednesday, which I totally call it, by the way. This will run for the next 5 weeks or so, I believe, maybe 4 weeks at this point. I was able to complete it in about 3.5 hours on my first go, and I put together a video with some of my best tips and tricks that I came up with while in that playthrough. So if you're stuck or you just want to know a little bit more about the expedition, go ahead and give that a watch or a listen. Hopefully it'll contain something helpful. I'm not even making this up, but if you head down to the comments, some of the best tips are actually from other people who commented on the video. So if you're looking for help with anything, that's a good place to look. In other news, patch 3.66 hits consoles this week. So I already have it on my PS5, and it fixed a ton of bugs that came with Frontiers, as well as a couple new features. Notably, it added a teleporter to your overseer's office, NPC shopkeepers, and trade terminals to your marketplaces, which leads perfectly to our topic of the show, which is 4 ways settlements could be improved. So as you already know, I love the new settlements that Frontiers brought to the game. I know the lore states that, in the past the Sentinels prevented settlements from cropping up, but if you've noticed, if you've done the first mission for it, they send corrupted Sentinels. So I guess maybe that's how they explain that now the Sentinels aren't able to keep up with all the new settlements. And maybe that's how we're able to set down routes. But regardless of the lore, this new mechanic adds a lot to the game. And something that I've been wanting for years, to be honest, which is just the opportunity to walk into the Mos Eisley Cantina, right, on the planet. But since release, I've completely upgraded one Vy'keen settlement, and I'm in the process of building out Gek and Korvax settlements as I speak. So I've been able to see a lot of variation available, and let me tell you, there's a lot of variation. So settlements are probably the single most procedural element in the entire game, besides maybe last year's Derelict Freighters. And I love variation in No Man's Sky. I crave it. So any update that introduces this much potential for unique structures is a win in my book. That being said, I don't think settlements are where they need to be at the moment, if I'm being honest. Mainly, I think they're missing the depth required to make them more worthwhile for explorers and managers alike. So for this podcast, I'd like to run down 4 ideas I think would make all the difference. Obviously, there are plenty of ideas I could think of, but let's just stick to 4 for today. So, number 1, add more interactivity. So the new NPC tech vendors and trade terminals that they added to the structures this week, or to the markets, make a huge impact in all of my settlements. Instead of these being like these empty structures, these empty markets, they're now destinations where I can purchase components to continue construction or sell the products that my settlement produces. They actually function as markets now. Sadly, none of the other buildings in my settlements feature any interaction whatsoever, minus dancing in the cantina. So what I would love to see are interactions added to pretty much all the buildings, where possible. The saloon / cantina / bar / dance hall / you know what I mean, should probably feature some kind of NPC barkeeper. Believe it or not, there's currently no way to purchase food anywhere in No Man's Sky. In the whole universe, you can't buy food anywhere. And that's despite the game actually featuring about 300 unique edible food products. Like, cooking is a mechanic in this game, and there are tons of products you can cook, but yet there's nowhere you can just buy a drink or buy food. So imagine if barkeepers would actually sell procedural assortment of drinks, right? So each establishment would have its own selection. Or maybe they could offer like simple on-planet missions, kind of like the NPCs you see at like trade centers. That would be another cool thing they could add. Just a little bit of interaction would go a long way to selling that Mos Eisley Cantina sci-fi fantasy. But what about the other structures? So you have warehouse / storage buildings that honestly they could just function as additional storage, much like the buildable storage units in your freighter or base. Residential buildings, maybe they could add appearance modifiers, right? So it's like you go to your room to change. Or maybe they add some kind of community element, not sure. The industrial farm units, maybe they could yield procedurally branded products, unique to that factory or to your settlement or something, on a daily schedule. So in addition to whatever your settlement's generating daily, you could also pop into the factory and maybe they're available for purchase, or maybe you get them for free, but you would be able to get, unique products produced in that factory. I think that would be really cool. And honestly, even markets could further benefit from a little procedural magic. So currently, every market features the same trade terminal and the same technology vendor and one blank stall. Every single market, it's the same arrangement. So it would be a dream to have procedural shopkeepers that could sell any number of items or upgrades, including food, almost similar to a trade terminal, but as a shopkeeper, right? And maybe work in some items you normally couldn't get from a trade terminal. That could be, again, a food vendor, or maybe it's a clothing vendor. There's currently no clothing vendor in the game, so that might be a good way to introduce them. I would honestly even be happy if they just took like the existing vendors you see in space stations that just sell upgrades and just randomly like plopped one of those into the third spot. Even that would be pretty cool for me. The more variation, the merrier. So let's see. There are also like hydro towers and small generator rooms. They currently don't do anything. Let me know in the comments if you have a suggestion for those, or even any of the ones already covered. I'm sure there's plenty of interactions they could add without even like adding new mechanics, just working with what they've already added to the game elsewhere. So moving on to my next thought, I believe the settlements released this month are not Hello Games' final form of the mechanic. Chances are they probably had plenty of ideas that they would have loved to have added, but they had to cut in order to meet their release date. And I think the best evidence for this is actually how quickly they added shopkeepers and trade terminals to the marketplaces. I don't think the markets were meant to be blank. And when it first released, I remember thinking, it looks like they meant to put something here, but they didn't get around to it. And lo and behold, like less than 2 weeks later, they added the rest of that functionality. Another thing, in fact, is that even though my settlement's maxed out, I still have a ton of space for additional buildings, like maybe 30 or 40% of the area is still completely empty. So that gives me hope that maybe it's possible for Hello Games to introduce additional building types in future updates. These could include, for example, and these are just ideas off the top of my head, right? Maybe they add a garage that sells exocraft upgrades, or a hotel, and the hotel increases your population of like different races, and maybe that's how you get travelers to join your settlement, right? If you have a hotel, they visit your settlement. Maybe a theater or stage for events. So as you're managing your settlement, it always asks, oh, can we throw a festival, or can we throw this event? It'd be cool if maybe, that ran for 5 minutes or something, and it was just like something you could physically see on a stage. I think that'd be great. Maybe a hospital or clinic to heal your injuries, something really simple. Or what about a library? And every day you go in, you get a different piece of lore. That could be cool. Or maybe a guild hall where you could actually find a mission board and run missions from your own settlement. Or even like some kind of military facility that would increase your defense against sentinels. And there's probably like a million other buildings based on real life you could add. And it's really not reasonable to expect like all of these to be added, but I just wanted to illustrate like the possibilities that are still on the table, even within the framework that they've established with this last update. But even if they did add all these new buildings, and they made them as interactive as like my first idea, I still think something's missing. Well, 2 things. Well, honestly, a lot of things, but really just 2 things. So customization and integration with the rest of the game. These would go hand in hand for me. For example, if we look at Desolation, which released last year, it introduced procedural dungeons in the form of explorable derelict freighters. Now, they could have made them really shallow or just isolated from the rest of the game, but instead they did something smart. Hello Games made sure to integrate them with as many mechanics as possible. For example, if you complete the derelict freighter, you have a choice to either get a unique procedurally generated upgrade for your personal freighter, or just a whole ton of nanites, right? Which you can use to either buy paint for your freighter, or spend on any other upgrade in the game. You could also find salvage frigate modules aboard derelict freighters, as well as a ton of new building pieces that you could only obtain by finding the actual blueprints while exploring. It also added new enemies. The unique currency found inside these freighters, tainted metal, also lets you interact with the new scrap dealers, where you could purchase unique decals, building parts, banners, and an appearance. So now what they've accomplished with all this is derelict freighters not only appeal to explorers who just wanted to see the new interiors, but also combat seekers with unique enemies, right? Builders with unique building parts only obtainable through those, fleet admirals trying to min-max their fleets, and treasure hunters looking for a payday. Now, if we compare that to Frontiers, which actually introduced something like 300 new building parts, yet there's not a single unique reward from settlements. All of the new parts are purchasable from the anomaly, just like any other building part. No unique banners to be earned from upgrading your settlement all the way to S-Class. No unique appearance that you can only purchase from your markets. No procedural upgrades or products that can only be found in your settlement. If someone were to skip settlements entirely, they wouldn't miss out on a single unique enemy, upgrade, part, or appearance. Now, I know what some of you are thinking right now, and please excuse this very poor impression I'm about to do. Well, I'm an explorer. I didn't buy this game to settle down and manage a town. I'm glad they didn't gate any content behind another thin mechanic. And I hear you, which is why I think settlement customization is what should be tied to exploration. So, imagine if you could hire NPCs to join your settlement from across the galaxy. You might search dozens of systems looking for someone with just the right qualifications to enhance your settlement, or that brings a unique product to your market, or something similar. Or maybe they add museums to settlements, right? 1 per settlement. And the items on display are relics that you dig up from ruins around the galaxy. Or maybe they add a library, and every time you visit a planetary archive, it adds a book or a new record that you can then read later. Or if you max out your standing with, say, a guild or a race, maybe they give you a special statue or a banner or something that commemorates that on your settlement. Essentially, I think customization would function better as a way to influence and improve your settlement, much like the current mechanics, versus being able to recolor a wall or move a chair or reposition a poster. Personally, but who knows, maybe I'm wrong on that one. Either way, better integrating it with other mechanics in the game such as exploration and trade would go a long way to making it worthwhile for more groups of players. Additionally, limiting customization to just sort of the bigger picture, but still allowing players to really influence the settlement in a direction that fits their playstyle, I think would be really useful and probably a more engaging loop. And that's it. Those are my 4 main ways I think Hello Games could really make settlements worthwhile. Now, for the record, I love what they gave us, but after building up a settlement and almost finishing 2 more, I really can't help but wonder at the possibilities that are now enabled by this new framework. But what do you think? Should they integrate settlements with other mechanics, or keep it isolated? Should we be able to make changes to our settlement after the fact, or just leave it to RNG like a ship? Let me know in the comments below, because I bet y'all have even better ideas than I do, and I'm sure you have opinions on the stuff I've suggested so far. Before I close though, I always like to highlight something from the community. This week's community highlight is an app that I've used for a while now. It's the Assistant for No Man's Sky app, available on Apple and Android devices, as well as the web. And it features pretty much anything you need to do with No Man's Sky. It's got recipes, guides, checklists, the complete item catalog. It's got the latest expedition milestones. Anything you need while playing No Man's Sky, you can get it in this app, and it's totally free. I recommend it personally, and I hope you will at least give them a look. But alrighty, that wraps up another episode of the Deep Space Travel Break. Let me know how I'm doing. Last week's episode was nearly 2 hours long, but not too many of you watched it, which, I mean, fair enough. But should I try and keep them under 45 minutes? Do y'all prefer I ramble alone versus with a guest? Or what kind of content are you looking to see? I read all my comments, and any recommendations or suggestions you have, I do take them to heart. So thanks again for watching. Likes and subscribes are always appreciated, as I'm trying to grow this channel and become a bigger part of the community. Hopefully you'll join me on that journey and help me along. Thanks again for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Until next time, have a good one.